Hello everyone, and welcome to Gamer Church, the series of game development streams where I follow my progress through the process of trying to bring the sort of meaning to the art of video games that is traditionally only ascribed to sacred texts and the most elevated forms of philosophy. If you doubt that I'm going to do that, I would encourage you to keep watching. This is my most recent sketch so last time when I said that the scene I was working on previously, the scene with the obelisk in the graveyard, when I said that was the first scene, I lied. And also I should make a distinction between scenes and points of view in scenes. So this is an entirely different file. So there's going to be a loading screen between this and the next scene. So that's the most basic unit of space in my game. And each scene is associated with a blend file and a set of assets. But this is one of the less developed ones. It has less time put in, and I think you can sort of tell. This is what's in the game so far. It's really just a sketch, and there's stuff I like about this. What I like about this is the sketchy quality of this, because I think bringing the characters in just as line work is sort of better for iteration than spending all this time fleshing out the characters and doing the shading and rendering, and then bringing it in and noticing that I want to change something. So process-wise, having like stuff in the game in sketch form is interesting to me. The way the background looks, the thing is that like the way the background looks is the three-dimensional equivalent of these two-dimensional sketches. Now, this asset is pretty much done. The shading could be worked on a little bit, probably. But that grave was one of the graves that I had sort of built in for the previous scene and then brought into this scene. And also the two runners, there were also an instance of sprites that I built for the previous scene that I brought into this scene, and they're also pretty early sprites as well. So along with, there were a few aspects of Julian that I decided to change here that I'm going to need to update in the next scene. And I'm probably going to make some modifications to these characters that will require me to change the more finished sketches in the next scene. So that's an instance where I probably would have saved time if I had done all the line work first and sort of gotten everything in place, but it's not a big deal. In this stream, I want to take this scene to the next level of completeness. And to go back to my sketch, I sort of came up with this idea of, initially I was going to have this pose in this scene. But then I sort of realized I had sort of the problem of the transition from this pose to that pose. And then also the fact that in this pose, Julian is sort of looking at their phone, but I want them to be sort of reacting to the runners that are going by. So that, like, what I did in this sketch, I was just tooling around, trying to create, like, in-between poses. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure that's necessary, because it is just an awkward transition. And as of right now, I think probably just going from this pose to the next pose, like really what the timing is going to depend on, I think, is because in any case, it's not like you're going to be animating from one pose to the other. The first pose is going to dissolve and the second pose is going to disappear. So I do think like I have some more leeway to just like jump from one pose to the next, but I do want like there to be this energy going from left to right. So if I find that that's lacking, I might go back and draw some of these in between poses, but as of right now, I'm not super concerned about it. So let's open the blend file and just like see what I've got. Oh, right. So The other thing I did last time, I have both of these figures set up to use a shader which has this dissolve input. So this is the input that affects the fade out and fade in of each character, and that can be triggered by an action within the game. So this, the second pose, is actually in this scene. Whoops. The second pose is actually here somewhere. It's just not visible yet. So I could actually, like, I think for today, the three next steps, the three things I could do in this scene. One, finish the characters. By that I mean color in Julian and take another pass at the runners. I have some thoughts about how to improve them, but they are still very much at like the sketchy stage. You can see even like the arms are still kind of like stick figure arms and marionette arms. Two, I could take the 3D background to the next level of detail, which I could spend some time modeling the tree. I could try to get like more of the background in. I think I decided against this like vertical stripy pattern for the grass, but also maybe I might take some of the foliage that I drew in the previous stream or draw some new foliage from scratch. So I think the branches of the tree, the branching of the tree is going to get a lot more complex, and I have some reference imagery for that open in my other screen. And also I want to create some unique tree textures and sort of try to make a tree that is a little bit more, since the tree is going to be a larger part of the scene, make a tree that's a little bit more detailed than the tree in the other scene, right? The third thing I could do is actually get into the game engine and start to plan out some separate views. And right now, there's nothing interactable in this scene, but it would just be a matter of placing a hotspot and doing pretty much what I did in the previous stream, which is the next scene, and have another viewpoint of the camera where Julian fades away and reappears over there, and that'll also give me a little bit more to work off of for the foliage. Breaking that down even a little bit further, like the tree that I want to model is actually pretty different than the tree that exists. So just having this be a little bit more accurate to what I want, I think would be a good starting point. Because this tree sort of, it goes up and then it's got this Y-shaped branch, which actually I guess is kind of thematically appropriate because of the Y-shaped graves. But the tree that I'm looking at in my reference imagery it sort of all sprouts from one point at the bottom, and I actually think that's going to give a better sense of like this as a shrub and as a space, and it's going to sort of fill in this area back here. Because in this scene, ultimately, I don't want a lot of the sky to be visible. I would like there to be a little bit of sky peeking out over here, and then the rest of this should be this sort of canopy. Okay, so let's get started. Let's turn off the elements. Let's turn off the lights, and let's just isolate the tree for a moment. I'm gonna make a copy of this, and let's just get rid of this. Let's see. For reference, this is the photo I'm using. It's a photo I took of some yew trees in the graveyard, and I think I'm gonna basing it off of this one might be a good idea because it's got this kind of like right-leaning energy. Because otherwise, I'll probably have to flip this one. Although I do kind of like the base of this one a little bit more. I guess I also like that this one is like emerging from this cluster of these sort of pines, which is also going to be the sort of leaves that occupy the canopy. The shape, it would basically go like that. And I mean that also, it has a kind of arch shape, which I like. But I also feel like I could do that with the other form, and like I don't really have any satisfying photos of how it terminates, but I don't have that with the other side either. Maybe I'll just borrow a little bit from each side. Well, let me just try something. I still find myself kind of drawn to this one. Especially now that I flipped it, it's like it's more dense on this side. Even though a lot of the energy is going towards this side, also a lot of the density is over here. And since you're going to be ignoring that side, having like a bunch of branches sort of go off to that side sort of makes sense. And then on this side, you have this branch which twists around, but then also breaks out over here and goes back down. And I think that is sort of something that would make sense in terms of like what goes over here, and sort of maybe like having a little bit of like lighter branching that goes up and over here. So let's do that. And I want to be able to communicate the twisting of this via the UV maps. So I'm hoping to go into like a little bit more detail with this than I did with the tree in the other scene. I do kind of want to have the well, first of all, that is much too big. So I can get that fixed real quick. I do want to, let me just take this camera as well, because I want to have this point of view as reference. And then let me do a vertical split. And this is actually like, this is a very confusing tree to sketch because I've sketched it before. So it's probably going to be just as confusing to model. Or a little bit above that. It's going to branch into a sort of Y shape. So it's still got a bunch of Y shapes within it. I mean, that's a tree. A tree is really just a lot of Y shapes. I am designing mainly for that point of view, but because you're going to be panning it around it a little bit, like, I want it to still make sense in 3D, or else I'm going to confuse myself with the optical illusion. And I think it could be a cool effect to just like actually model all these branches, because I don't really think, like in the render it's going to get a little bit more high resolution, but, and obviously it's a little wobbly at this point, so it's going to go up in polygon count a bit, but right now we're at 5,000 triangles, so maybe we could have like 10 times this much detail. And probably a lot of the, we could get across some of the branching via billboards. but I would say we're not there yet. I would say let's just keep rolling. And let's take a look at what it looks like in the context of everything else real quick. I think it looks good in the context of everything else. I think it looks cool. And I think I'm going to keep going. I think I want to get like another level of smaller detail. I just want the grass to sort of go back to where the horizon is, ish, and sort of extend to the edge of the screen. I don't know if I really have a consistent philosophy on like how the ground is going to like act, but in this scene it's going to be relatively flat, I think. And to avoid those big lines, I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and I'm going to UV unwrap this again. And then I had the intention of having like a little hill over there. So let's mess with the path a little bit. Actually, let's mess with the ground a little bit, because the path is like the path seems to be in mostly the correct place, but the ground needs a little bit to be molded to the path. You can go like this. It's sort of this dip shape. So let's export this again. I have, for the Blenderers in chat, I have I'm a programmer and I've got a plugin. It's a very basic Blender script that formats the scene into a format that's readable by my game engine, which is this. So yeah, like I expected, the ground is kind of horrible. In the previous scene, like the lighting worked out so that like as it went into the distance, like it just kind of worked out. But I don't know if I want to spend the time to like get the shader to actually behave the way I want it to. And I think what I might do is just like make a hard cutoff. Plobby asks, how did you make your engine? Well, like, so I was actually working, I was doing more like detailed high poly subdivision stuff for my job. I was doing like product rendering and visualization, so I was doing a lot of very very realistic and detailed stuff. So like for the sake of my game and my personal projects, I'm more interested in more of a low poly setting. I'm aiming sort of a medium poly target, but it's really whatever works on the browser. Because I spent some time after a while of doing subdivision, like that sort of detailed subdivision modeling, I started to get more into like shaders. Because whenever you're doing like a procedural material in Blender, you're doing a shader. So I was able to learn a lot of the basics through that, and transfer it over to WebGL, which I'm kind of interested in. I'm not like a great programmer. I'm sort of doing an adventure game because it sort of feels like stepping forward through a scene is kind of like a very basic version of programming. I don't have to worry about physics. I don't have to worry about any of that. I'm primarily an artist, so I want to set up my scenes and make it look like an illustration and make it look the way I want it to. So that's been my motivation, and it's motivated me to learn enough JavaScript to use the 3JS 3D library to make a sort of engine that lets me bring my shaders in. The script basically reads this and converts it into shader inputs for these. And this scene is at a very basic, rough point, and I'm about to tweak it so that like let's add the other let's add the grass here, and I'm just gonna have this grass in the foreground just to avoid all this more effect. Oh, that's kind of interesting. It still shows up a little bit. Even though I set all these materials to the same color, it's still like the line still appears somehow. That's actually a little bit weird. Procedural stuff is fun. It's like for me, like I started learning nodes in a very intuitive way, and just sort of like um, my first experiments were basically about like placing patterns around the edge of like ceramics, and just like figuring out how to do repeating patterns and add them to stuff. And then from there, I was able to sort of like get more of an intuitive understanding, because it is very like actually like writing out a shader is very obscure. So I think it's a context where it makes a lot of sense to have a node-based system, and then you can sort of like once you make that connection between the program shader and the material nodes, you can replicate it with math. And I think a lot of people take the other path, where they like come in knowing a lot of math and then they learn shaders. But as a illustrator, this is just sort of the direction I come from, and it's worked for me. When I learned like the stuff you can do with 3JS, I was a little bit shocked, and I think it's a little bit obscure, so I understand why it's difficult to get into, but it's just interesting to me how much stuff you can do in the browser nowadays. Because like when Flash games started to have 3D support, I was kind of like, wow, we're really turning a corner here. And you know, Flash had to go away. Flash had to go to a farm upstate for reasons that are beyond my understanding, and also apparently have to do with like browser security and all this. It's just kind of like, and actually like as I was like learning it and playing around with it, the other shocking thing was like how much even just JavaScript can do. Because you're like, to make 3D work in the browser, you're, you know, passing like a lot of vertices back and forth. You're passing like all the information from Blender has to become represented as a JavaScript object. So like with my background of just, I only know JavaScript in terms of like, you know, typical web dev examples, I was just kind of like, oh, you can actually do game programming in this. And I'm not going to say it's approachable, because it's a lot less approachable than Flash was, in my opinion. But like, it works. The issue with the grass texture here is that I'm not thinking about having grass like under Julian. So I'm thinking about having another plane that is just like brown. And then I'm going to, did I fix the subdivision on this? Yes, I did. I'm going to subdivide this, and I just want like a, and I'll re-UV map it later, but I just want like a sort of, that's better. It's still very obvious that the grape is hovering. It's sort of the problem with the way I'm representing the characters, is that inevitably the drawing is going to exist in its own space, but then the 3D is going to also have its own space and exist however it wants. I was thinking about turning the shadows on in 3JS just to see how it looks, because that's one way I can get a little bit of a better sense of what the lighting is going to do. I'm going to go into Visual Studio, and I'm going to go into the scene info.json. And I'm going to keep that open, and I'm also just going to open up the obelisk scene info for reference. The scene info here, the object info is currently empty. And to turn on the shadow, I have to write the name of the object, which is U, as in U tree. Make that a dictionary and put receive shadow, true, cast shadow, and like whether the shadow works also is going to depend on how the sun is set up, which I just copied from the other file, so we're going to see. I don't think, unless I have it in a very weird place, it will probably work. And actually I do have it kind of like way off. Let me just put the sun there, because the sun projects a box in front of it, which is what makes the shadows work. So if everything isn't in that box, it's not going to cast a shadow. So U is going to cast and receive shadows, and then dirt, which I didn't name. I'm going to call this dirt, and I'm going to call this grass. Dirt and grass are both going to receive shadows but not cast shadows. So I'm just going to copy this twice. Dirt and grass, and just take out the cast shadow. And I'm just going to export this again for good measure and refresh. Okay, so that's cool. The resolution of the shadow is a little bit chunky, which I think I made the shadow map very large for the sake of the previous scene. I feel like I'm at a good point with this tree. I don't like that it's just this default material. I want to get at least like a color in. I guess I'll just take the dirt texture. I think I'm going to push it a little bit more towards red, towards a reddish brown. And maybe a little bit more dark. Cool. Okay, so that I feel like that gives a little bit more context to the shading. And maybe I'll actually pay attention to the fact that this is supposed to go here. Okay. Cool. That looks a little bit better. Parts of the tree that are bugging me now that I'm looking at it. But I want to move on. So let's open Photoshop. So this is Julian. This is the sketch I started last time. And I have this picture for color reference. Now, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring you in. Now you're in the game with colors. That's good. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go into add a cube. And just have it be like right here. Pretty big cube. And I'm gonna change the viewport display to wire so that it doesn't really show up. And then I'm gonna export this again, but over here in my game, I'm going to add a hotspot, and it's gonna be called Julian Hotspot. I'm gonna borrow some stuff. Under right scene hotspot, I have the cursor change. The other thing I was thinking about working on today was UI, but I think I'm gonna save that for next week. I think we've got a lot done so far. I'm gonna add the hotspot to the camera so that the camera knows that that's an active hotspot. And then I'm gonna copy this this action. This is the action that dissolves Julian's shader. It's change shader value. It executes it once. So that the next time it comes around, it doesn't do it again. And then it takes the material called Julian, which is already the case, and it changes the dissolve parameter from 0 to 1. And then what I want is for the next Julian to appear. So I'm going to add another action. I'm going to set the material to getting complicated. I'm going to set the material to Julian 2, and I'm going to set the parameter 2 to 0. To 0. So I'm setting dissolve to 0, which means it will be undissolved. So click here, and there we go. The next one appears. That's pretty good. And yeah, maybe the camera gets moved over. So this is the bush cam. I'm going to copy the bush cam, and I'm just going to call this bush cam 2. And this should be centered more like here. Maybe forward a little bit. Maybe rotate it a little bit. And maybe change the field of view a little bit. I add bush cam 2 to the camera info just so it knows it's there. Change camera action. Target. Bush cam 2. Now we click this. Dissolve out, dissolve in, movement. Cool. I'm going to take a little break real quick, and then I think I'm going to just take another pass on these two guys, and then I'm probably going to play Dune for a little bit. Yeah, these guys just they look kind of flat, and parts of them I think look better than other parts. One detail I really want to add is like the flaps of the legs, and I want to be more careful about that. The shoes are also not very detailed. There's a lot to work on here, I think, but there's also a pretty good sketch to start with. So Okay. So he was actually probably the more close to finished one, and now I'm happy. I'm happy with that. Now you. back to shading. Oops, wrong layer. This layer should actually be colors. And then we're going to copy Joel's skin tone. And Joel's shirt tone. And the watch is the same. Pants are the same. I feel like they look a little funny, but I'm okay with it. It's definitely one of these figure drawings that like I've thought about too much at this point. I do like how the shadows are like a complementary color, which I think I did a little bit with Julian, but not as extreme. Nice. Cool. There you go. Thank you for attending Gamer Church. I suppose next time I visit this, I will be doing more. I think adding the foliage and leaves is going to add a lot to this scene. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do over here, but it might be important when I get to the this part. So yeah, and I still have some like continuity things to fix, but that's okay. All right. And also like, I think probably these guys can move over to the right a little bit. Yeah, there they are. All right, that's it. Bye-bye.